amongst the committee that helps put this thing together. The Hall of Fame committee, they're written in your programs on your table, but I would like them to stand, please. Dale McGregor, who chairs the committee, Roger Wilson, Rachel Frank, Dave Nusser, Dave Davies, Sam Wong, Steve Mundell, and myself. We put a lot of time into this, and hopefully, it turns out good. Everybody enjoys it. That's our goal for each year. And again, I know it's going to be mentioned later, but the one thing that we continually look for as a committee is to get more nominations in for all the different categories. And again, you can find that on our website. It's nice to say, hey, we think so and so should be in, but we need to have something in writing. We need to have something on the website, or even if you mail it into us or something, at least it gives us an idea of people who we can nominate. So if you know anyone worthy of it, please let us know. Up in front here, we have a table set aside. We set it up every year. This table up here is to honor those Hall of Fame members who have passed. Unfortunately, just last month we lost another one in Ozzie Williams, who was a friend of mine, a competitor and a coach again. But we always like to remember those Hall of Fame members who have passed away. Each inductee tonight is going to receive a plaque, a certificate, and a ring. And what I'm going to do right now, real quickly, is I'm going to read what the certificate says, what the plaque says, so we don't have to read when each person comes up here to give you an idea of what it's saying. For the certificate, USSSA Washington State Hall of Fame, this witnesses that this person, upon the nomination to the USSSA Washington State Slow Pitch Hall of Fame and the election by the USSSA Washington State membership, is hereby inducted as a member of the United States Specialty Sports Association's Washington State Hall of Fame. In testimony whereof the United States Specialty Sports Association's Washington State Slow Pitch Hall of Fame Committee authorizes this high honor to be recognized forever by those associated with the United States Specialty Sports Association of Washington State. Inducted on this date, the 7th day of February in the year 2015, signed by Dale McGregor and Roger Wilson.
Yeah.
The plaques, they read USSSA Washington State Hall of Fame Award presented to the person in honor of your outstanding achievements within USSSA Washington throughout the years. Your contributions will long be remembered. Inducted into the Hall of Fame February 7th, 2015. All right, our first inductee tonight is in the coach manager category. Frank Faltensby has been involved, affiliated with USSSA since the early 1980s, being a coordinator and coach of the softball program at Westminster Chapel in Bellevue. He soon switched their league over to USSSA and has continued to stay involved with the USSSA church program ever since. From Westminster Chapel, he went to Overlake Christian, where in 1992 they won the church AB state championship, defeating Perennial Power People's Church. And he's currently at Canyon Hills Community Church, where in 2005 they won the church D state championships. He's also been part of helping the church program grow over the years, as well as helping through the tough times that we are currently going through, and is someone I've enjoyed playing and coaching against and getting to know. Here to speak for Frank tonight is Jim Captain.
I first met Frank Faltensby around 25 years ago when he manned a men's softball program, sign-up table at Overlake Christian Church in Redmond. And Frank oversaw a men's ministry program that fielded as many as 6 teams for league and 4 U-Trip tournament teams. I thought, okay, how competitive could these guys be if they had a church program? Aren't church players supposed to be conformist, non-competitive pansies? Actually, I wrote sissies, but I just said pansies. And of course I thought I was hot stuff as a player because I had played Jack and Jill ball with a group of guys from the gym where I was working out. Boy, will I be able to share and show some of these guys a thing or two. And these were just my thoughts. I filled out the sign-up sheet as Frank was looking on, and one of the boxes to check was skill level. There were 5 boxes, 1 through 5, with 5 being the highest and 1 being not so high. Guess which box I checked. Without saying a word, I heard Frank murmur under his breath, "Guys always think that they're better than they really are." Yep, he had me sized up pretty well. My relationship with Frank grew over the years from being a player on Team 4 to playing and coaching on some of the more competitive teams later on. Frank mentored me not only from a player and coaching perspective, but as a Christ follower, which Frank taught me is really key in any leadership position. Frank helped this legend in his own mind grow in his faith and accountability and leadership and turn him into someone else. He used to think he had it all figured out. He did this all without preaching, just by how he lived his life and conducted himself. I've learned so much from Frank over the years. I even learned that God created the universe during the middle of a ball game. Did you know that? First 3 words in the Bible describes it. In the beginning. I know it's true because Frank says he was there. Scripture also says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And this is from Proverbs 27:17. Remember that verse. Over the years, Frank and I enjoyed conducting summer softball clinics at high schools and universities in Southeast Asia that wanted training in slow pitch because it could be played by a more range of diverse skill levels than fast pitch, which was pretty prevalent there. Anyways, on one of our long 13-hour nonstop flights home from Hong Kong, Frank never left his seat. Remember the verse? Saying he didn't need to. Yeah, iron something. It must be cast iron. I really believe that Frank did most of the sharpening, and I'm so thankful for his mentorship over the years, even in areas where he may not have even realized. I'm really pleased to introduce 2014 USSSA Hall of Fame inductee, Frank Follansbee.
Yeah, Jim and I had a great relationship over the years, and we both learned from each other. And that's one reason why I chose him to introduce me, because I feel like we've had a great relationship and I've enjoyed it. I just want to say thanks to 3 groups or individuals. First of all, I couldn't do this without a wife who for 57 years now has watched me run off to play softball. Brenda, I'm going to ask you to stand up. Go ahead. Come on, Brenda. Oh, I'm in trouble for that. Yeah, she hates to have attention her way. Secondly, I had daughters who either went to games or let me go. In fact, I have one daughter who actually pitched a couple of games and still holds it against me. So when my daughter's in back to this done. So let's see. The third group that I wanted to thank was a lot of the guys that have played for me. You know, as a coach, as a player, you cannot run a good program if you don't have guys who are willing to pull with you. And over the years, those of you who've coached for years and years, and I've been coaching, when I started at Biola as their baseball coach, so I've been coaching for years and years and years. You know you can't run a good program without guys and women who are willing to allow you to coach and don't fight you for leadership. So I've enjoyed so much getting to know people over the years. And finally, I want to thank God for giving me the health to be able to do it. You know, a lot of people would love to be able to play ball and that for years and years and years, and they're not able to because physically they're not able to hold up. And so I'm really thankful that I've had the privilege of playing and coaching for 40 years now. So thank you guys for inviting me and giving me this award.
All right, our second inductee tonight is in the umpire category, Mr. Chris Greger. Chris began umpiring when he was just 16 years old. He went from umpiring in high school to playing baseball at the University of Washington and at Whitman College. After playing softball on some of the better teams in Washington, he returned to umpiring in the late 1980s and quickly became one of the top umpires in the area. He was requested and volunteered for all the top-level games he could get and earned the respect of players and coaches in Washington. In 1995, he was elected to umpire in the Men's World Series in Florida and had the honor of being requested to work the plate in the championship game. Here to introduce Chris is fellow umpire Kevin Moeller.
Chad, how are you doing today? Good to see you. Good to see all the inductees. Before I get started, I do want a big shout out to Ed Haugen, who retired last year at 42 years. I wonder why you do it great. One of my answers when I came up and someone who took time to help me out at Issaquah, deal with Layton and some of the other people that were out there that were always running after us as umpires. Chris tells me that he first started umpiring in or around the age of 16. He worked over in Enumclaw, Ellensburg, yeah, Ellensburg. Both a couple of places that have a lot of stuff on the field that doesn't have anything to do with the game. He constantly strived to become an umpire based on his relationship with his father. He told me that he made $4.50 a game, and I had an old saying, I used to make $15 a game, and I always used to tell you in the pregame that you got $14.99 worth of stuff during the game, and then after that, you were probably going to punch your ticket somewhere else, and I just don't think I could have umpired in that era at $4.50 a whack. We both grew up in or around the same time. Chris had a longer career than I did before I got there, but he was someone who, he always looked good in his uniform. Big strapping guy. He was a player, which I always thought was funny because being a player and being an umpire is a little bit like being in the NAACP and the KKK all at the same time, because I don't think you can relatively do it very well. There's a few people, Steve, I know you did it, and I said did it well, Steve, so don't get too excited. I can't tell you that Chris was an athlete, and I think that before he went to become an umpire, he had the respect of a lot of players, and I think that helped him. I had a lot of respect for him because, I always wanted to look just like him. He had a sharp uniform, all fully pressed, nice deals. And he was the first guy, and I think he was really responsible for some trench setting, some project runway activity out there. Because see, back in the day, we used to wear these socks. This is what they gave us. And actually, this is a contemporary back in the day sock. Because when I broke it, you had 3 red stripes, and it didn't say USSSA on it. And we had to wear them all the way up to your knee, and nobody wears, socks unless you're with the Knicks back in the day, all the way up to your knees. Chris never put them on. always had him down, would pay a fine at the beginning of the year, and then coast through the rest of the year with his socks down. I really admired that. He was able to change the way we looked, and at some point in my career, we went to the nice little booty socks that we have now. Chris says that girls didn't like his white legs during the games. When he would wear these, it would be sunny, and then he'd have these white legs. And he said that girls didn't like that white leg look. I don't think women really liked umpires anyway, Chris. So from my take, I think you were on the wrong spot. He also played for a team, Miller's. Is there anybody here from Miller tonight? Anybody remember that old Miller? Just you, Chris. Just you. You know, they were good teammates. They had Billy Williams, right? And Gene Anderson. And they had a player called the Fridge. Does anybody remember the Fridge? The Fridge was not one of my favorite players. The Fridge was called the Fridge because that's about how long it took for him to get down to the first baseline, and he was out every time. So we had the pregame, and I'm walking up, and I can hear the Fridge is barking, you know, everybody stay off the umpire. Nobody on the umpire during the game. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting, because he's the only guy in the dugout that's ever really on the umpire. So I'm pretty encouraged by that, you know, by that speech he's making in the dugout. And he comes up, there's 2 outs in the bottom of the first, there's 2 guys on, and he hits a 2-hopper to the first base, rather on the first base side, and they pick it up and throw it over to first. And from my perspective, it's the Fridge. He's going to be out every time. It's close, though. It's close, so I bang him out. He goes ballistic, walks back over, gets ejected, and here's Chris standing in the dugout, and he goes, well, that didn't last very long. Consequently, it was a doubleheader. We go to the second game, and up comes Billy Williams, and Billy didn't like me either. You know, for many of you players, you probably remember that feeling. He didn't like me either, so Billy walks up and he says, Kevin, that was really a bad call in the first inning last year when you threw Billy out, when you threw the Fridge out at first base. And I looked at Billy and I said, Billy, if you thought that was a bad call, you're really going to hate this one. And Billy went. And I looked over at Chris, and Chris is just laughing, whooping it up. So that Miller team was a very tough team. Chris was an umpire who went on to do the Men's Major World Series in Daytona Beach, I believe,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
He was one of the guys who actually made it onto ESPN, right? They filmed some of the game and called me up and said, hey, I'm going to be on ESPN, and sure enough, there he was. And he had several other highlights in his career, none more than getting to work with, I think, you know, the group of umpires back in the 90s that did predominantly the Sunday games. And you know, that was Eddie, certainly Steven Stepp, who's not here tonight, one of our guys who's passed away, a real character in and of himself, Bobby Scott, and Chris, and myself. And I look back at those times, and they were some of the best times of being out on the field, and we lived together all summer long doing hundreds of games. Players would come up to me in May, and you know, there'd be a problem, and somebody would bark from the dugout, hey, wait a minute, we're going to have this guy a dozen more times this year. And that was always, you know, that was always a factor. We had some interesting nights out at Green Lake. Yeah, doing the Rainbow Coalition games. That was always very exciting as an umpire after I would do, you know, 8 games, and then to get to go down there and do those 4 games, and you knew you were in for a tough game when you looked over into the dugout and they were knitting with steel wool. That was some tough women back in the days. There was also things I saw go on in the dugout that I didn't understand until about 10 years later after the advent of the internet. I will also end, I guess, by saying, Chris, great friend, good umpire, great umpire here. Today, in front of you, I present one of the last of the dying breed. He's started when he was 15 umpiring and went all the way to the top, and is a good friend and a good teammate, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck. Thanks, Chris.
Sadly, most of that is true. I thought about it for the last couple of days. I started umpiring, Kevin's correct, the spring of 1976, got drug out of the hayfield. My dad had umpired the year before. Back then, ASA was the only game in town. and said, hey, if you're into it, why don't you come umpire some softball games? I thought, how bad can that be? I'm in the hayfield, gotta be better than that. So I thought about how am I gonna, I was out there for just about 30 years, from the time I first put on a ASA uniform till the time that I called it quits in '05. And so how do I sum that up in a reasonably quick period of time? And I thought, think about the memories that you might have of all that time. What are a handful that come to mind? So I thought I'd share those with you tonight. The first one is, of course, the very first game I did at 16 years old. In about May of 1976, 16 years old, I go out, and of course, for all you that are old enough to remember, that was back in the day when you did the warm-ups in the tavern, and you brought the 40-ounce coolers of beer with ice, and everybody had 19 Rainiers in them before you even threw the first pitch. Okay, so take yourself back to that day. All right, so there I am. Top of the first inning, first two guys, easy fly balls. Third guy, two-hopper to the pitcher, out by a mile. This is great. Bottom of the first two guys, lazy fly balls. I'm thinking, this is great. This is going to be easy. This is the best decision I ever made in my life. Third guy up in that inning hits about a 9-hopper to the third baseman. It is bang, bang at first base. And the guy running is about 6'4". He's got a goatee. He's got 9 Rainiers in him. And that's when I learned that Ty doesn't go to the runner. Ty goes to the ump. Everybody's looking at me and, oh, I got him out. He turns to me and says, you're effed. And now, you know, I don't know if you've ever had in your experience in life when time kind of slows down a little bit, and you have the time to kind of stop and think about things, and I did. For that period of time, I thought, what comes out of my mouth in the next 5 seconds is going to be a big factor in how long I go in umpiring softball. And I turned around and threw the guy out of the game. And he turned around and looked at me and said, well, you're still effed. And I said, well, you're still gone. And so in the course of about 5.5 minutes, I had 5 outs, an injection, and I was off of my softball career. And I was ASA, and so here we go. So some lessons I learned early on, keeping in mind I'm 16 years old, and I worked in Ellensburg through the summers. I'd come back from college, and I'd work games, and it was about 2 summers later. Now keeping in mind I'm in my teens and early 20s, so I want to party with everybody else, so I'm not going to lie. There was a few games I did there where I had a little bit of a headache on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, especially in Ellensburg when it's 108 at noon, and you're standing out there trying to call balls and strikes. So I had a game that I remember that there was a team, and by the way, I learned this early on too, and for every umpire out there, you know that it's a mathematical equation.